beautiful clouds?
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
Put the rumors to rest. Gotta help the children and give it a best can. Send a run and be blind to the fast can. Taking no more, how can they relax? I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see your smile, baby. Living on earth, we must respect the earth. Human and animal, we are disaster. Right to peace and opportunity. Nowadays we are blind, we can't see.
Welcome to GeoEngineering Watch Radio. Richard, are you with us?
I am.
Very good.
So, anyway, I wanted to welcome everybody too, and Dane unfortunately had another commitment today and is on another radio show. So we'll try to keep this one interesting, and I'd like to make a few new comments this time that we haven't had before and open up some potentially interesting areas for people to think about. And of course, Russ is with us, who has the website globalskywatch.com and an incredibly successful Facebook group that is growing very fast with more than 20,000 people in it now, and everybody should take a look at joining that and becoming active and communicate with the other people with similar interests and things like that. So anyway, I'm going to bring up some unusual points today. I know that everybody's aware, if you're listening to this show, you know the basics. There is a huge program going on worldwide, just for people that might not be too sure about it, with what appear to be thousands of high-altitude jets flying all around the globe, dumping toxic metals and other poisons on our heads and on top of the biosphere, with causing massive damage to all life forms on Earth, and also disrupting climate patterns and weather patterns. So that's the basics that have initially brought us together, and the show is an attempt to look at that in a wider perspective, not only to keep up with developments in the damage being done by the spraying and ideas for potentially stopping it as soon as possible, but also to understand where it's coming from and what it means, and looking at it in the context of overall global and personal well-being. So I thought I'd add a few thoughts on that today that I think Dane would also find interesting, and he has encouraged me to go ahead and do this. I don't know if people remember, but I'm coming from a health perspective in the sense that I'm an independent health scientist and have been since about 1965. So I've gone very deeply down that rabbit hole, you might say, because I'm not a conventional scientist in the sense that science has been redefined in present day. And just for people that might not be sure what that means, in modern day higher education, at least where I have seen it going on, science is now taught as the practice of reading and memorizing or paraphrasing what is published in acceptable journals or expressed by acceptable authority figures and repeating that yourself as if it's your knowledge, or maybe giving a new twist to it, or like I said, paraphrasing something like that. And the whole bottom line of that system is that the acceptable knowledge doesn't grow and change, or if it does, it's very, very slowly, not keeping speed with what's needed in the modern world. The other thing that happens along with that, and Russ, any comments that you have on this too, I'd be interested in your take on it.
Absolutely.
And later we'll open the phone lines too, but the idea of science now is that it's based on mostly on single variable studies, and what that means is you have two different situations. One's called a control, the other has something changed, but hopefully as close to just one thing as possible, the objective being to find out if that one thing makes a difference. And the problem with that, one of the many problems with it, is that that doesn't match nature, where the variables are essentially infinite, and most of them aren't even known. And the other thing is that these days it's completely under the influence of industry and big money interests of various kinds. In the old days, science was not like that. Science actually existed long before journals existed. And that was okay, because what it came from was observing nature in all its different parts, and also observing oneself psychologically and behavioral-wise, and in all different dimensions, and then noticing patterns in what was observed, and drawing conclusions and finding new understandings from observing those patterns. And this ability is built into human beings, and it has been since way before there were even books around of any kind. This is an ability that everybody has, and you don't have to be a state-certified expert to be involved in it. It just means you have to be awake, you have to notice what's around you, what's going on inside you, and then start to learn. And it's an incredibly fascinating process. And I know I've been deeply involved in higher education in the last several years, and it's been turned into something that's, to put it mildly, not interesting. Partly because it's out of touch with reality, and partly because you're just, individual thought is suppressed and discouraged. And I was recently told by somebody high up in the science structure and the educational structure that a real scientist now has no emotion and no opinion. And that's how to get started. So, in other words, become a robot, and that prepares you to do work for the power structure within your little specialty, since you don't understand the context of it in the wider sense. And you can be very useful in accomplishing all manner of atrocities for government or big industry and making a really good living at it, and that's what's happening everywhere. There was a great article this week by a man named Clint Richardson, which I highly recommend everybody who's interested to look up. Clint Richardson, GeoEngineering, that should do it. It's on the internet, on a search engine. I like to use Start Page instead of Google because it doesn't spy on you. That's another story. But if you find that article, what he's brought up is that even though the authorities have been denying the widespread ongoing nature of so-called geoengineering programs, they not only know all about them, they have gone way beyond that into making careers in geoengineering and putting them in universities all over the world. I mean, it's just totally incredible. They're preparing to have people work in geoengineering not only of the sky, but of the oceans, of the land, of the entire planet, and actually of everybody else, in society, so that geoengineering is intended to become a way of life. It's the idea of artificial control of absolutely everything. And of course, those at the very top of the system know this is total suicide. It's not like some oversight. But the people within the system that are being now trained for it, and these are in major universities already everywhere, and these people will just be really enthusiastic about the idea that they're joining the power structure, that they're going to be official experts. They can tell people what to do in various ways, and they're going to be scientists, and therefore, as long as they repeat what they're told, they will be considered as sources of objective truth. This is where geoengineering is going. It's a very integral part of the power structure's plans. They're not intending to change it anytime soon. They're planning to radically expand it. And as far as the population is concerned, my guess is that they are planning to have a psychological program roll out to make people, if possible, see geoengineering as one of the greatest saving programs for global catastrophe that was ever invented by the benevolent power structure, so that you'll all be grateful for what they plan to do to you anyway. And this is a common theme in much of what they do. Just pause for a second. Does that make sense to you, Russ? I can't see our audience, so I don't know if people are following me or not, but this is the beginning of an important point.
Yeah, absolutely. That does make sense. I know that so many things that are presented to the public as being the natural outcome of a sequence of naturally occurring events really are planned decades in advance. And the extent and the depth of planning that goes into these things is makes it actually very difficult for the general public to believe this, because they have been brought up through the school system that teaches them that everything is just a natural sequence of events, and maybe the prelude to wars. They kind of market it in a very cartoonish way where they say, oh, this country's mad at this country and this leader offended this leader, and it's kind of like a soap opera. And that's just not the way the world works.
No, that's right. And in fact, the public is, watching television and all kinds of nonsense that is training them not to think critically at all and not to be self-aware in any sense. And so they can't imagine, in general, most of us can't imagine that there would be people on the top levels of control that are very, very focused and don't share any of these qualities of scatterbrainness or short attention span. That's not what they're like. And I'm not talking about their minions in various levels of government. I mean the higher levels. And I have been in contact with some of those at various times, and they're not like that at all, to put it mildly. So what I'm getting in here, the purpose of it is to try to give a little bit more understanding of where this massive destructive program is coming from. It's, in my opinion, which doesn't necessarily reflect the opinion of the show or anybody else or Russ or Dane or anybody. It's just my own opinion from my background in very extensive health research, and that has gone into, from a holistic point of view, everything connected to health, which of course includes all of what we're talking about. And the health point was where I started when my own health was in really serious trouble, and I had to make a decision of whether to let the top doctors with their cutting-edge technology finish me off as I was getting worse and worse, or stop that and learn myself, take responsibility, and not depend on the so-called experts. And I chose option 2, and that's one reason I'm still here. And I'm not just still here, I fixed all the health problems, and I feel much better than I did 50 years ago. So I don't relate to age anymore at all, and I'm telling you that from experience that whatever you want to do, your own capability is incredibly vast. And that, more than anything else, that's what the higher levels of the power structure are afraid that you might ever find out, is who you are and what you can actually do. And this is an area that, it's a vast area. It's not a subject just for 1 hour, but this is an area that you could roughly call consciousness, but it's the discovery of your actual being. And to me, it's been incredibly interesting. I don't think I'll ever divert from it, but the discoveries that it has led me to have really been the reason that I've talked less and less and less to people in the outside world, because I'm coming from such a different place than the average mentality that I don't see any point in just being seen as a space alien that nobody can relate to. But, I just felt this hour that I would share just a couple of little things that might get people thinking and kind of jar you awake more, one more step out of, infinite steps that we all have to take. And I want you to be wide awake. I want you to be excited about what you can discover within yourself, the incredible potential you have beyond all the experts. And this is really more than any other secret what they do not want you to know. And they can't stop you once you decide that you have an interest in that direction. So one of the things to look at is, I'm just going to jump around here. I don't have anything planned to say. I want to share with you what our time allows. One of the things is, look at yourself more even than you look at everybody else. We have the tendency to be judging people constantly. This guy is good, or that lady's crazy, or, this guy must be, I hear all the time, especially about really phenomenal people. A lot of people just like to criticize them because I guess psychologically they think that puts them above them. So they'll say, well, this guy's working for, this clandestine group or whatever. I mean, just silly stuff. And much more important is to turn your attention on yourself. Start to become aware of your own thought patterns every day, your own emotional patterns that you're running. These are the things that color and screen your perception of reality. And these are the things that if you become aware of them and learn to direct them at will, instead of just reacting unconsciously to the environment around you, your potential abilities will go way beyond what you can imagine right now. I can tell you that from experience. And so this is the reason that people say to get away from your television set. Because the TV isn't just a bunch of dumb programs. The TV is specifically designed to, and this is in scientific labs and universities all over the country and elsewhere. They have monkeys and apes with electrodes connected into their brains, and they're testing different flicker rates and different subliminal energies coming out of the television to make them into basically hypnotic subjects to do whatever they're directed. And this is happening to all of us every day until you escape from the television. And I would highly recommend doing that. The other thing is to get rid of preconceptions and euphemisms. And preconceptions are very, very subtle, and some of them are obvious. And if you turn your attention on yourself, you can begin to realize which ones that you have and that you're carrying with you. So that's a very fruitful line of investigation that I would invite everybody to take. As far as euphemisms go, this means calling things that they're not. And I think it's a lot easier for us to understand what's going on if we call things what they actually are. For example, again, this is considered blasphemous in some circles, but I'm going to just, tell you honestly what I feel, because I don't really know any other good way to communicate. The term geoengineering we use because specifically we have an interest in talking to people in the academic world, in the government world, other places that we may be trying to make some headway and some inroads. But to me, this doesn't deserve the term of any kind of engineering as far as I'm concerned. This is about like calling a carjacker a vehicle entry engineer. And I think there's too much respect involved. These people know that they're poisoning the biosphere. Maybe not the lower level people that are just paraphrasing and repeating things, but the ones that are buying the chemicals, the ones that have the patents, the ones that are directing the planes, and they're watching the environmental effects, these people know exactly what they're doing. To call it engineering, I don't think they deserve that respect. So we use the term, but remember what it actually is. This is like an air raid coming over our country with bombs. It's like what happened to Pearl Harbor, except it's happening to almost the whole world. That's its real nature. It's not some scientific thing deserving of any kind of respect whatsoever in my mind. It's much like in medicine, and I have to preface my remarks on medicine with a disclaimer, just mainly because we have to respect the fact that we're not in a free country where there's freedom of speech. And there's certainly not freedom of health care. And that's going to get a lot tighter in the near future if the power structure gets to do what they want. So I have to tell you that I'm not a doctor, and I'm not telling you anything that you should do or not do. You can see this for entertainment purposes only, and if you want drugs or medical advice or diagnoses of diseases or things like that, please immediately go to the acceptable doctors and state certified professionals. So with that in mind, that this is only for entertainment purposes, let's look at chemotherapy. It's very similar to so-called geoengineering in a way. It's got the word therapy in it, right? So that you're not supposed to notice what it actually is, especially since there are all kinds of experts who are doing it. And what's chemotherapy? Chemotherapy is injecting very intense poison into your body through a major vein normally, and sometimes in your leg. And it's one of its side effects is that it can cause cancer, but usually way before that, it's going to poison all kinds of important systems in your body. And we actually fall for this kind of stuff because of the use of language. So we have to develop the ability to see through language and see what's actually being talked about. So, you know, I'd like to take that a little further, but Russ, if you want to fit in one phone call, we could take one, and then I'll continue as long as that's all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a phone call here waiting. Plus, I wanted to mention that we do have an event coming up in New Jersey, and the people who are running it are actually in the chat room, and they asked me to mention that too. So I want to give them a little exposure. On June 21st, they're having a screening of George Barnes's film Look Up. There's a $5 admission, $10 at the door, $5 advance. And I'll put a link to more information, or actually they already have in the chat room several times. It's at the Playhouse 22 in East Brunswick, New Jersey. It's a community arts, Playhouse 22 Community Arts Center, which is 721 Cranberry Road in East Brunswick, New Jersey. So try to get people out there to see the film. Dane Wigington and George Barnes. Dane Wigington will be there through Skype. George Barnes, I believe, will physically be there. Dr. Doug Levine will be there, I believe, physically as well. I will be there physically. And Richard, I believe you'll be appearing via Skype as well. Is that true?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we're going to have a panel after the showing of the film. So that is from 12 noon to 3 p.m. on Saturday, June 21st at Playhouse 22 in East Brunswick, New Jersey. And there's links in the chat that have more information about that. Also, Dane messaged me. I just got an email a little bit ago. And Greg Palin is standing by to make a visit with us on the show as well, Richard.
Okay.
So I'll bring him on shortly after the caller, after you're done with what you want to say.
Sure.
The caller, your number that ends in 29, you're on. How are you doing this afternoon?
Not too bad.
Good. So what's happening? What's on your mind?
Actually, I was just calling in really to just get some words of encouragement, because I try to tell people about this stuff every day since I've figured it out. And I mean, it's mind-boggling to me, and I can see it for myself every day, but trying to point it out to people, they just don't want to believe it. I just wonder if you guys could give me advice on how to get people to maybe open their minds up to something that's outside of their comfort zone, I guess.
Russ, do you want to respond, and then I'll say something about that too.
Well, the one thing that I'll say real quick is that here's what I feel. I feel very strongly about this, is that if we ignore the people who are ignoring us and we just find the people who are open to this, because the bottom line is if we just find all the people who have the common sense and the insight to recognize this is going on with a few minutes of research, we will have all the people we need to turn this around. So if you find people who are very resistant to this and don't want to deal with it, don't worry about it. Just move on to the next person, because there are plenty of people out there with common sense, enough insight about what's going on in the world to recognize what's going on. We have, I founded it is now, thankfully, the largest Facebook group related to this subject on Facebook, related to chemtrails and geoengineering, to the spraying in general. And we have over 20,000 people, and it's growing by hundreds every week. So I know how hard it is and discouraging, and there's so much disinformation out there, but people are waking up right now at record rates. We've never had people wake up so quickly before. So I really hope that is encouraging. There's a lot to be encouraged about. Yeah, go ahead.
That is encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah, I truly, truly believe we just have to find the people with insight and who can really recognize that this is really going on. And if people oppose you and they say these are contrails, just move on. You know, those people are just sleeping, and you know, it's not their time to wake up yet.
At work, I'm a conspiracy guy. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, the thing is that it's funny, because many people, it doesn't matter how much evidence you give them, they're just not going to wake up because they don't want to. I know for me, I woke up a long time ago to government corruption, and for me, I'm someone who smells and tastes the spraying. I taste the metal in the air to a point where it is overwhelming, and I have to wear a mask for parts of the day when it's really, really intense. And so to me, this is as real as it gets. It's absolutely real, and it affects my health, and I see it affect other people. So these people say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, whatever. People are asleep because they don't want to face the truth because they're too scared. It's too scary, or they don't want to be inconvenienced with it. But we're looking for people who care about the world, who care about what's going on, and they're out there in big numbers.
Yeah, I want to support what you're saying, Russ, and I think, caller, tell us your name again. I'm sorry, I didn't get to hear it.
Chad.
Hello.
Chad. Okay, Chad. What I would
I just want to say to the new callers who have joined, just hang on for a second, and we'll get to you in just a minute. Okay, I'll call on you. This show is going to go really fast. I have some other things I really want to go through. We want to get to the callers, and we also want to get to Greg Palin. That's it. Yeah, we've got callers in the queue. We got Greg, and we got you. So yeah, we're loaded.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We're going to have. There's going to be a lot of callers want to get through today.
Yep.
Let me just comment in support of what you said, Russ. That Chad. What Russ said is exactly right. If you try to debate and argue with people that are already decided they're not going to listen to you, they have the perfect right to feel and think and believe what they want, just like we do. And if you argue and debate with them, what will happen is frustration and burnout, and you'll just get exhausted for nothing. And the fact, like he said, is that there are a lot of people who are really exploring and wondering, and more are waking up all the time. And those people are looking for information. And on the areas that you have some, it's a great service for you to share it with them. And when they already want it, you're not going to feel burned out. You're going to feel exhilarated. So if you're talking to the right or the wrong person, you can tell by how you feel. And if you get somebody that really appreciates and wants the information from you, you're going to feel good. The other ones are only worth talking to if you want to feel totally wiped out, and I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, that happened to me with the guy I work with, actually. He doesn't really want to get into it.
Yeah, like and so let him not get into it. He doesn't have to. And there's so many people that would enjoy sharing what you're finding out about that you don't have to worry about the people that don't. In fact, you'll just waste your time. So it's really more helpful the other way.
Well, I appreciate the words, and I'll let you guys get to the other callers, and thank you for all that you do. Keep the words.
Thanks for being interested. Really appreciate it. Russ, what do you think? I've got several more points I want to at least go through briefly, and then I'd be really interested in getting as many callers plus getting Greg on, if we can.
Yep, go ahead. Greg is standing by. We've got callers standing by, so go ahead. I'll just.
All right. I'm sorry, you guys. I just have some more things I want to throw out there, and I'm thinking that they might help give people interesting things to think about. And you might want to have pencil and paper around because I'm going to give you some links and references as well. First of all, my feeling is rather than just seeing the lines in the sky and even understanding that they're dumping poison and aluminum and everything on your head, it's better to understand how this fits into the bigger picture, because the more awareness you have, the more you'll be able to coherently discuss it with people that are interested. And my feeling is there's no way to stop one arm of this monster without getting to the monster itself and turning that around. Now, this is not the monster itself, but it's a lot closer to the source. And what I'm talking about here is Agenda 21. If we had a 6-hour show, I'd be able to explain a little bit about it. But since we don't, I just want you to, if you're interested in really understanding this stuff and not just saying every week, oh, it's really terrible, make it an educational program to start learning on your own. And you have many fantastic tools, one of which is YouTube. So if you know how to use YouTube, go there, look for Agenda 21 commentary, and especially one of the people that I think is really excellent to start with. Her name is Rosa Corey, R-O-S-A. Her last name is K-O-I-R-E. And she has many YouTube lectures and interesting talks on there. The one to start with, I think, is called Behind the Green Mask, which is also the title of her book. Really, really worthwhile. And this is immediately relevant to the spraying activity. It's part of the whole agenda that came. Agenda 21 is a name coined by the United Nations or one of their contractors, and that came out of a meeting that they held in South America in 1992. And that, with other documents that go with it, is actual publication that you can read if you want to on the internet. It's not any kind of a theory. It's actual fact, and it's being enforced step by step worldwide. And the spraying is an integral part of that. Without understanding that, no matter how much we complain, we're just not going to get the spraying to stop by itself. They've got hundreds of billions of dollars into it. They're pretty committed. So learn all about Agenda 21. Again, escape from your television. It's affecting you subliminally, as well as in the flicker rates and energies that are programmed into it to make you stupid and compliant, like fluoride in the water. It's really true. You're supposed to think that these things are totally stupid. They're not. They're real. So find out about them, investigate them, get your news from other sources. One of the best ones on the planet that I've found for overall news is Infowars.com. And you can partly tell by the vicious attacks that are directed against it, not only from trolls, but from the government itself, from the Obama administration, from the Bush administration before that. Any tyrannical presidents or people that have in mind to do unpleasant things to you will try to attack real news sources. This is one that's really, really worth supporting. And I'm sure that people will say I'm crazy for that because they've got some really vicious attackers. But most of them don't know what they're talking about. They haven't spent the time. I've talked to Alex personally quite a bit. I know where he's coming from. And he's not coming from left or right or defending any particular point of view except for freedom, which is supposed to be the basis of America. And I'm going to try to talk faster. I don't mean to take up callers' times, but I want you guys to think about this stuff. The other thing that, in terms of words and euphemisms and things that you hear being put out as talking points by the power structure, you notice that presidents who are really interested in invading other countries and taking away all of your rights in America are really into promoting democracy. And don't you think that's a little strange? Well, democracy was never intended to be any part of the form of government in America. In fact, the founders considered it very destructive and a segue right into tyranny. And the reason for that is that in a democracy, the majority gets to vote for whatever they want. The people rule, right? So if they get together and want to take away the rights of any minority group, I tell you, it's done right then. You're done. And if you're a smaller minority, you don't have a chance. But in a constitutional republic, which is what we were supposed to have here, the rights of even one person are totally protected, and they can never be taken away no matter how many people disagree with you. So the basic idea in America was supposed to be live any way you want, believe anything you want, say anything, as long as it's not, really like fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire or something like that. But any point of view you have is respected as your point of view. And as long as you don't take away the same rights of other people, then you get to live however you want. That's a constitutional republic. And it requires very, very few laws. Most of the laws we don't need. And there's just a few. Honor your contracts and don't hurt anybody else in any way. That's supposed to be the basis of our country, and it's been turned around where the government doesn't work as a servant of the people anymore. It thinks it owns the people. And in the new Common Core education, which is part of this whole takeover program, the study of the Constitution and the Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence and all those principles is being completely deleted. And what's being put in instead is quite different. And again, if we had an 8-hour show, we could go into that. But please, study those things for yourself. Watch the news on prisonplanet.tv. Write that down. That's the video arm of Infowars.com, which has the print news. They're really worth supporting. Now, the other thing is that if you want to be able to be effective in any important cause, such as getting the spraying stopped, you need to start by getting yourself in really good shape. And that includes all levels. Get your news from a reliable source like I just gave you, but also take care of your physical health. And just because they're spraying and we've got poison all around us does not in any way mean that you can't be super healthy. That's a complete myth as far as I can tell. And I can tell you that from experience because I'm living in a place that's being sprayed horrendously every day or almost every day. And I feel better than I did 50 years ago by far. So learn about health and, In fact, the real health principles, which are not allowed to be taught now on a public scale, or else you can get raided and arrested and, by the real power structure, which employs police to try to stop free thought and speech. Real health principles were being taught thousands of years ago. They still work today. I can give you references on that if you want. Health is something that you have to get by yourself. There isn't any doctor that can give it to you. And the modern medical system is great on trauma care and emergency repairs and things like that. But as far as health, only a few brilliant MDs who got through the system with their thinking intact know anything about health, as far as I can tell. This is just my opinion, obviously, but it's very, very educated. And all of the major diseases that are wiping out the country right now, the $3 trillion a year in healthcare costs because everybody is so sick, this is almost all totally unnecessary. Most of what's called natural aging is totally unnecessary, totally abnormal. There are specific ways to reverse and prevent all of these things, and they work even in the middle of chemtrails. So let me see if there's anything else important here that I wanted to get out. And of course, we can go into any of these areas if any of them interest you more. But you have amazing potential. Get yourself in fantastic condition first, and whatever you want to work for, whatever cause you want to promote, you'll be 1,000 times more effective and feel a lot better about it. So you want to try to take a call or two, Russ, and then get Greg on too, and continue the calls after he comes on?
Yeah, why don't I get callers, hang on just a second. Why don't I get Greg on here real quick, and then we'll get to callers right after. How about?
Great.
Is that all right? Okay, here we go. Let me call Greg on here, and then the next caller will be the phone number that ends in 27. So bear with me. I'll be with you in just a sec, or we'll be with you in just a second. Let me see if I can get Greg connected to us here. Hi, Greg. It's Russ Tanner and Richard Sachs with GeoEngineering Watch Radio. How are you?
Hey, Russ and Richard. How are you doing?
Hey, Greg.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Fine.
Yeah, doing good.
Good.
So, Greg, depending on what you want to talk about, we've got callers on the line, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But also, it's always really interesting to hear whatever you have to say.
I'll tell you, I did want to make a comment. I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity. Russ brought it up, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and I think he really touched on a very important topic that a lot of us as Americans don't want to acknowledge, and that being the health effects that we're all feeling, and how we tend to write it off to old age and write it off to working too hard. I know I've been guilty of that myself, saying that, oh man, my shoulders are hurting and my knees are hurting because of this, that, or the other. I'm getting old. But I thought that it was a really good point that Russ made, and I actually made the point in an essay I wrote the other day that I posted on my Facebook page about how we do need to talk about these things and how we need to get over our fear of how others might perceive us if we complain,
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I don't know if you heard the earlier part of the show or not, but Greg, we were talking a little bit about health, and I just made a few brief comments, but one of them was you can tremendously improve your health right now, regardless of the environment, regardless of the chemtrails. Take an aggressive point of view that way, not against other people, but to make yourself the absolute peak of what you have the potential to be. And there is so much that you can do that is not allowed to be talked about publicly. And maybe, if people are interested, we'll have more time to get into it. But I would tell you that you can have great health now in spite of what they're spraying on you. And at least for the moment, that's more than possible.
Dane and I were talking the other day because I tend to be a nose to the grindstone type, selfless, don't worry about my health as much as I should. And Dane brought up, and I had never heard of it, hemp seed oil. And I've heard of hemp oil, but he brought up hemp seed oil that he said it's really got great health benefits.
And I think you're right. I think we all need to, especially us, those of us that are engaged in this fight that maybe aren't sleeping as well as we should and stressed out more than we would like to be. We need to be operating at peak efficiency and optimum levels. So anything we can do to improve our health, I think, is would be time well spent and probably money well spent. Do you have any other ideas in that regard, Richard? What other products are available that are good things for longevity?
There's a lot. I mean, again, as time allows, we can get into that, but I want to make one important point, and it's about a whole way of thinking. It's a paradigm of understanding health, and that is that in the naturopath schools, for example, right now, they're giving how to use certain natural means, herbs and other things, which I use a lot of, and they're great, instead of drugs, and I think that's fantastic. But what needs to be understood more than that is that it's an entire lifestyle issue, and that the lifestyle as a whole is what your body responds to, and what it gives you back in terms of health comes from that. So anybody that really is serious about wanting to operate at a much higher level, be much more effective, feel good energy almost all the time, there's not a product for that. You have to start. It's like these shows where they do makeovers, except you do a makeover on your own everyday lifestyle, and that has such massive effects. It's almost beyond description.
That makes good sense.
So anyway, and people that call in, it'd be good if you let us know if you have any interest in these things. And we're taking kind of a different approach today, and I'm just encouraging everybody to start to explore what your potential is, because that's the thing that we're not supposed to know. And there's no issue that you can talk about that's anywhere near as impossible, near as important, not impossible at all, but near as important as raising your own level of awareness. And that comes partly from getting your physical body in great shape. Your brain works off the same bloodstream, carrying the same toxins that you put in it mostly, and with the same nutrients that sometimes you don't put in it as the rest of your body. So if you want your brain really sharp, you need to learn about nutrition, detoxification, and real healing, not the medical paradigm.
Yeah, one thing I would throw in too is I talk about mercury a lot because I've done a lot of research on mercury poisoning. 200, as per Dr. Huggins, who wrote the book It's All in Your Head, connected 200 of the most common diseases are associated with mercury toxicity. 200 of the most common diseases. We should have virtually no disease today in the world, but these things have not only been allowed to propagate, but mercury has been put into the environment. I believe it's being put in the environment right now purposefully. There are coal-burning power plants that are being very, very resistant. The governments are being very resistant to spending 1%, to raising bills 1% to remove over 99% of the mercury. They emit 300 pounds of mercury, 300 pounds of mercury a year from their smokestacks. Cosmetics, the red coloring cinnabar is the red ore of mercury, so you see that in cosmetics. Dentures, if you have people who have dentures and then they start to have dementia and other issues, of course, amalgam fillings and vaccines are very common sources of mercury. It's amazing when you start connecting the diseases to heavy metal poisoning and you start looking at the policies of government that have not just facilitated but promoted the use of these poisons. And why? Because it makes the pharmaceutical industry absolutely wealthy. So it's not by accident.
Yeah.
And furthermore, lead and mercury were found in the snow samples up in New Jersey. So, I think it's more than possible, obviously, that they're using lead and mercury for artificial ice nucleation,
Yeah, and it's not just an oversight that it's harmful on the side. It's the main purpose. There's so many of these agendas that are interlocking, but gradually wiping out the population, in my mind, is definitely a very clear one.
Yeah, we've got... go ahead.
Well, I just want to, again, encourage people, learn about Agenda 21 if you want to understand it and go on from there. But also, let's kind of try to weave in some callers to the discussion. This is such a short show. We're going to be gone in 15 minutes, so let's try to get to a few of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greg, it's great to have you on here. I appreciate you joining us. It was such.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, it was great having you last time. Caller, we have a caller. That phone number ends in 27. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi guys. This is Dan Sherry up in Rochester.
Hi Dan, how you doing?
Hey, folks. Great. How are you?
Good, good. What's on your mind?
Well, I want to put in the kudos to Richard. I always appreciate hearing about your interest in helping people holistically through nutrition, especially. Just a real quick story. I had an accident, just a fluke thing, back in the 90s where I got hit in the stomach. Long story, but I ended up getting a perforation in my large intestine that eventually manifested itself into ulcerative colitis, and I didn't have any idea this was going on. I suffered with severe ulcerative colitis for, probably close to 20 years. And again, make a long story short, I saw a friend of mine who was a doctor, and he told me how lousy I looked. I told him I felt lousy. And he said, you should go get a colonoscopy, which I did, and that's when we discovered I had ulcerative colitis. And I saw a gastroenterologist, and I said, well, basically, what do we do about it? How do I heal this? And he said, you don't heal colitis. It's with you for life. So I got put on medications, and you go through the whole rigmarole of having imbalances in your life. You take the medication, which makes you even sicker, but it makes your colitis better. So, you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I took it upon myself at a point to research it, and I found a product on the internet, and I could give the name if you guys are interested. But anyway, I ended up reading about this product, and they talked about certain nutrients that are deficient in our soils and things. And make a long story short again, I ended up buying the product on a whim, and it ended up healing me. And I told my gastroenterologist I was taking this, and he rolled his eyes and laughed and said, do what you need to do. And I had another colonoscopy scheduled, and I went in and had it, and he came over, and the look on his face was priceless, because I not only didn't have I didn't have any more colitis, but I also didn't show any scarring of ever having had it in the first place. So having gotten through that and not have to go through that god-awful disease and having to take medications and things is the most amazing place that I could ever imagine being. It's just been incredibly enlightening. So thank you, Richard, and keep plugging this stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. That's a great story. And it's really true. I mean, the doctors are trained to really tell you with great authority what's impossible. And
absolutely.
So many people have been told they'll never walk again and all kinds of stuff like that. Most of it's not true.
Well, what was the product that cured the colitis? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's called Digestacure, like it sounds, DIGESTAQURE.com, or even CURE. And they claim their overall point is that we are missing long-chain polysaccharide molecules from our diets. And long-chain polysaccharides, and it used to be available in great numbers in the soils, used to get absorbed into our foods, and we actually have receptors in our large intestines that accept nothing but long-chain polysaccharides. This has been developed through our mankind's history, and we don't get these polysaccharides in foods. So they found these polysaccharides in certain types of aloe plants. And within a week or two, I started to feel better. It was quite a regimen. You don't just do that. You have to, be careful of eating other certain things or whatever. Anyway, just listen, I just want to put a quick plug in, too, for flaxseed oil. Richard, you probably know about that. I've been reading quite a bit about how that helps get into the brain, and it bonds with aluminum, and it helps push aluminum out of your brain into your hair follicles. That's a good way to get rid of aluminum. And if I could ask a question, you guys, real quick, I don't know if you have time to talk about this, but a certain area of research I'm in right now is discovering that quite a few of the Nazi scientists from World War II were brought over here at the end of World War II when we were moving in on Germany, and they're basically given witness protection, name changes, and all that stuff. And I've been reading a lot about how these people infiltrated the government, and they are quite a few people who are amongst this big machine that's going on, including the UN and Agenda 21. Do you guys have any input? I'll leave it at that. That's all I want to say at this point. But do you guys have thoughts on this? Have you researched that? Have you heard this type of thing? I'll drop off at this point. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally familiar with that whole program. I'm sure Greg is too, and Russ is too. So that's another thing that we could spend several hours on. But yeah, it's true, and you can really recognize the signature of this kind of person in designing things like the medical system, and many other parts of government programs now go perfectly along with what the counterparts were doing in Germany back several decades. So, but anything you guys want to say, and then we should try and take some more calls too.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, anything?
Yeah, I agree totally. God knows a lot of what's going on in this country. This is not the first time around. We have multiple cases of this tyranny throughout history, and they use the same patterns of behavior over and over and over. It'd just be nice if we could get people to wake up to see that these are patterns, and what's happening today is nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. How true it is. How true it is. Caller with the phone number that ends in 79. How are you? Or I'm sorry, caller with the number that ends in 06. My mistake. Sorry. 06? Are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're on. How are you doing?
My name's Lana, and I just want to thank you both so much, Rush and Richard, for putting this presentation on. And I'm calling from North Bend, Oregon, on the West Coast, not too far away from Dane, actually. And I'm putting in a plug for our presentation that we're having on June 14th. And it's called Look Up and See the Truth, Chemtrails Kill, Geoengineering and Your Health. And it's going to be done at the North Bend Public Library, 1800 Sherman Street, North Bend, Oregon. And Dane will be available for questions and answers after we show the film Look Up. And I'm not going to take up any of your time. I just thought that I wanted to get that plug out there. And thank you so much. And health-wise, I just want to say I'm a retired RN. I worked for 36 years in the business on the wrong side. And I just really feel people need to stay away from prescription medication as much as possible and find themselves a good acupuncturist. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot. That was great comments. And a lot of people have gotten great help from acupuncture. So I agree. You want to take somebody else, Russ?
Actually, we're clear right now. If you, you or Greg want to talk.
Yeah, let's hear more of what Greg was going to say, because I'm sure, he had more on his mind than just 30 seconds worth, and it's always interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce the idea that the listeners need to go to Dane's website, order his brochures that he's made available, along with the DVD, and get those out wherever you go. When I walk in a restaurant, I take brochures with me. I hand them to everybody in the restaurant. I'm building a cabin up in the mountains right now. I'm actually up in the mountains as we speak. And when my contractors come in for this, that, or the other that I'm working with, I hand them 4 or 5 brochures. I really, truly believe that to get this word out to the mainstream, we're going to have to do what's uncomfortable and make ourselves reach out to our fellow man. We are our brother's keeper. I wrote that the other day in an essay on my Facebook. And I think it's really, really important right now to hit it as hard as we can in terms of reaching out to our fellow man and getting these brochures out and getting the DVDs out. And whatever money we may have in the bank right now, I just don't think it's going to do us much good in the months and years to come if we continue to be geoengineered.
Yeah, DVDs are great and the brochures are great, each in their own way. People enjoy DVDs, so I think it's really worthwhile to distribute those. And the brochures, especially if they're put in a place where people can easily see them, they can definitely get a lot of people thinking, so I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and these billboards, too. We put up several in Atlanta now, and I'm actually working with Fairway Billboards. I want to put up my own billboard for Dane here in Atlanta. But to get that message out for Dane's website, to get people by the millions, some of these billboards we're putting up are in areas where they're getting 1 million views a week. That's substantial. So what I encourage people to do is, everybody knows 50 people. Go to those people, and it causes you to push yourself to reach out to those people for $20 a piece, and you could put up a billboard for a month. So, again, it's getting people out of their comfort zone to reach out to their fellow man and get this word out as fast as you can.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We have a lot of people. We have people in San Francisco. We have people in Australia. We have people all over the world who are going out on the roads. They're holding up signs on the side of busy roads. They're giving out flyers on college campuses. They're talking to professors in college campuses. There's a lot that we can do. We have a tremendous amount of power with all the tools that we have today to actually make a really big difference and do this. And Greg, do you want to tell people a little bit about who you are? I don't think we ever gave you a bio on this. Do you want to give a little of your background so people know who you are?
Yes, I'm a businessman. I'm in the construction fabric business and have run my company we've been in business 27 years, and I've always paid attention to politics and ran for U.S. Congress here a couple of years ago because I was so aggravated with what I saw happening in our country, and I actually got in at the very last minute. I was going to contribute to my opponent's campaign and went and listened to him speak and wasn't impressed, so I decided to run for Congress myself with about 3 months to spare and ended up with about 47% of the vote. So I was pleased with that, but we've got a congressman here in Atlanta by the name of Hank Johnson that somebody needs to beat him. But he is so entrenched and takes about $450,000 from the military-industrial complex, so it's hard to beat a guy like that. But my Facebook page is Greg Palin for Congress, and what I do now is education and activism to try to reach people. So again, it's Greg Palin, the number 4 Congress, and I think if people would go to my Facebook page and look back through it, they would see a lot of things that they would find very educational and very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much going on, and it's great to see these billboards going up, and I really appreciate what you're doing, Greg. I really appreciate that. There's so much that we can do today. We have with printers and laser printers and all the things that we have. And I think I'm trying to pull Richard Sachs back, and we lost him for a second. But while we're doing that,
I think I'm back.
Oh, good. You're back. That's good. I want to plug real quick this event on June 21st. Once again, look up the screening of Look Up. Join us. I'll be there in person. Playhouse 22, East Brunswick, New Jersey, at the Community Arts Center, 721 Cranberry Road. Please tell anybody in New Jersey about this. Spread the word.
Is there a call with ending in 106, Dane?
Yeah, she had already spoken to plug her event. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So we're coming up on the end of the hour. We've got a few seconds left. Richard or Greg, anything you want to say?
Greg, go ahead.
Well, I just appreciate you guys having me. Really appreciate all the hard work that you guys have contributed, and hopefully we can wake up our fellow man to really get on the stick and get on this educational quest to wake up our fellow man as fast as we possibly can.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We're at the end of the hour right now. Here comes the bumper music. This is Russ Tanner on behalf of Dane Wigington and Richard Sachs. This is GeoEngineering Watch Radio every Saturday at 12 noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on UCY.tv. See you next week.